Hello, my name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Catechist Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.catechist.com, and my special guest today is Dio Resurrection Lead Singer, George Galvez. Welcome to the show, George. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great, and you are being interviewed today for our On the Record segment, which is where we talk to musicians such as yourself, George, about their favorite albums by the bands that really influenced them. And I'm assuming because you're in a Dio tribute band that you were really influenced by Ronnie James Dio and the album.
Absolutely. And
we've decided to make this a part 2 interview. Part 1 today we're doing is going to be discussing Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell, one of my all-time favorite albums. And why don't we start off the interview by you sharing with us, George, how you first got into Black Sabbath, particularly this album.
The first time I heard Sabbath was with Ozzy, and I was a fan of Sabbath, but I was always partial to Ronnie James Dio, and especially when he used to front Rainbow.
Wow!
And so once I heard him sing with Rainbow and sing some of the classic songs that Man on the Silver Mountain, Stargazer, Kill the King, his voice was so powerful. And when I found out that when he had left Rainbow, and found out that he was going to join forces with Black Sabbath, I just knew it was going to be an amazing album.
Now, before you knew Dio was going to be the new Sabbath singer, I mean, what were your initial thoughts when, obviously you're an Ozzy fan, when you heard Ozzy was leaving Sabbath? Was it like a lot of people, they're never going to find anybody that can, fill those shoes?
I didn't feel that way. Everybody was so... At the time, Ozzy was just in a really bad place.
Yeah.
That's why he was being replaced. I was really kind of at the time hoping that he was gonna, was be able to get himself better and he could get back out there. And of course, we know what happened after that.
Yeah.
So.
And it's kind of interesting because a lot of people assume because Ozzy was the singer that he wrote all those great Black Sabbath tunes, but it was actually Geezer and Tony that wrote most of the stuff. Even Geezer, I know, wrote a lot of the lyrics to the early Sabbath classics.
Yes, that's very true, and you find out a lot about that. It's kind of a lot of the rock and roll myths and history that a lot of people find out later on. Yeah,
you read, unless you really, even if you read the album credits, kind of it's misleading because a lot of the early Sabbath classic albums, it'll say like they were all for writers on the songs, but I understand that's kind of what was a business model for a lot of bands back then because, as we know, that's where the money is. So a lot of the big bands would, just to kind of prevent any feuding within the band, which there was anyways, they would, back in the classic rock days, they would like split the songwriting royalties, but a lot of people aren't as generous with that, these days.
Exactly. What's interesting is that unless you, at the time, for the albums, if you really got into the album and started, if lyrics were included, great, but a lot of times when you're reading all that information, it just kind of, it just kind of went over your head.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, and a lot of people weren't really, they didn't really care who wrote the song necessarily back in the day, but back in 1980 when this album came out, people were still into albums, I talk so much about I miss the days of going to a record store. I mean, that a lot of the kids these days, they don't really know what the experience is. I mean, you'll tell them a record store, and they'll tell you, a record store, what's that,
Yes, that's so true. And even buying tickets back in the day, it was a great time to stand in line buying tickets overnight so you could get the best seats possible.
And
that was always a great time.
And I will say, Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio is a totally different animal. I mean, I love the classic Ozzy stuff too, but if I had to really sit here and be honest, I got to tell you, my favorite stuff is what they did with Ronnie, just for the fact that he was such a great songwriter, and his lyrics, I mean, he really took you on a magical and musical journey. I mean, he wrote a lot about like witches and demons and wizards, but man,
well said.
I mean,
well said.
I was there, he took me there.
Yes, it was very visual, and you know, from the very first cut off that album, which was Neon Nights,
Yeah.
it just captivated you. You've already got that rock and steady beat, and then he comes in with his "Oh no, here it comes again."
Oh,
and
yeah.
it just drew you in. You could not help it. You could not help it. The first time I actually heard that song was I was in my uncle's van. I had an uncle that was really technically my big brother at the time.
Okay.
And he had a total 77 Dodge conversion van with the CV whiptail and the Krager and it was rocking. Pioneer system, and then he actually had the cassette and the album and stopped by the Tower Records at the time.
Tower Records is my favorite of all of them. Yeah.
Yep, and popped that in. We were on our way down to the beach that day, and that was the first song I heard, and I was captivated. Immediately captivated.
I'm glad you brought that up, George, because for a simple fact, when I first contacted you about doing an interview here today, you and me were sharing kind of a similar story in that I was sharing with you, my very first kind of exposure to Ronnie James Dio in my case was his Heaven and Hell album, and very much like you, the very first song I ever heard by this version of Black Sabbath was Neon Nights on the radio. And man, when I heard that track, it just took me aback. I mean, I thought, man, I love that song. And then I love that song so much, I went and got the whole entire album, and it was like 8 or 9. You get 8 tracks, not 9 or 10, but so it was a little short. But man, it was a quality album. Just from top to bottom. This is one of those albums where I can honestly say, it's all killer, no filler. There's not one song on here that when you're listening to it that you want to pass up.
Oh, absolutely. And when especially hearing his voice, it just captivated you.
Yeah.
The second song off that was "Children of the Sea," and it took you from that to this. We sailed across the air, and it just pulled you in. And I was just really, really fortunate to be able to see Ronnie James Dio's first performance with Black Sabbath at the Coliseum on August 17th on that year. And it was a great lineup. You had Cheap Trick that was there on the bill. You had Molly Hatchet. You had Journey. It was just an amazing day. And all these strong singers. But I think I met him once at a NAMM show, and I was telling him how I seen them walk down to the stage, and they were all dressed up, and he had his robes on.
Wow.
And the whole Coliseum just erupted. And Ronnie turned to me when I was telling him this. He goes, "You know what? You remember it better than I do."
Yeah. I mean, imagine how many, even at that point, imagine how many concerts, between Sabbath, well, even if you go all the way back to Elf and then Rainbow and Sabbath, imagine how many concerts he had done up at that point, even in his life,
Exactly. But it was truly an amazing experience, and the stage was covered with crosses, and they actually started out with this thunder and raining going on, and they went into war pigs, and he was so stoic and clothed with dressed in black, and he was just stood still. And at the end of the song, when it says "Satan lapping spreads his wing," he opens up, and you see this red satin on the inside of his robes, which is I have a copy. I actually have a very similar robe for my show.
Oh wow!
And he had these long fingernails going on. It was just this demon rock god.
Oh, that's the best way to put it.
And exploded.
And it's interesting. All those great support bands you just mentioned. I recently had a chance to interview one of the guys from the Outlaws, the guitar player Freddie Salem, and a great kind of country southern rock vein, kind of like Lynyrd Skynyrd and that. And he was telling me, like, I think on this tour in 1980, they were one of the opening acts. I think they also played with them. He said at the Forum or the Coliseum in L.A. And I said, "Oh, what was that like? You guys are kind of like southern rock legends, Outlaws, and you're opening for a metal band like Sabbath." And he says, "Here's the funny thing." He goes, that was one of the greatest tours we ever got to do, because the audiences were, you would think there'd be like a rage, like Outlaw fans and Sabbath fans would kind of be two different worlds. He said, but he goes, I'll tell you what, I was a Sabbath fan, so I was lucky. I felt fortunate to be able to open that show for those guys. But he says it was a very interesting tour, but because you would think it'd be like they'd be riding, when the Outlaws came on.
Right.
Yeah. But
absolutely.
It
was an amazing show, and I'll never forget it. I truly would never forget it.
And people, I only bring this up because it's amazing when you realize, what little of a guy Ronnie really was. I remember seeing him. They were calling themselves Heaven and Hell at the time, of course, but a few years before he passed on. And when I seen them, they were doing a tour with Queensryche. Jeff Tate was still in Queensryche, and Alice Cooper was the other headliner. But it was a great show, and it was amazing because I was a little back, in the arena. It was outdoor, arena. But in any event, you see Ronnie was a little tiny guy on stage, and this powerhouse voice is coming out of it. It was amazing. I mean, a little guy was able to reach those high notes and scream. You could hear him all the way back of the outdoor arena.
Correct. It's just to see this, and for lack of better, he was such a short little guy, but with this monstrous voice.
That's the point, yeah.
And if you heard him do interviews, he was so very soft spoken.
Oh yeah.
Completely so soft spoken, and such a nice, gentle man. But when it was time for showtime, as he said, he put that microphone in his hand. He just came to life. Absolutely, just came to life.
Yeah, there's always, of course, one or two people who don't have anything nice to say, but Ronnie James Dio, for the most part, I dare you find anybody that knew the man that didn't like him or had one bad thing to really say about him. In fact, you hear so many incredible stories about him. I heard a story once where, this was when he was with the Dio band, had a solo band, and they just done a gig or something, and it's pouring down rain, and they're leaving, and everybody's gone home, and all the cars are out of the parking lot, and the tour bus getting ready with all the guys in the band. They're getting ready to leave, and Ronnie has the driver stop because he sees this one guy all by himself in the pouring down rain, and he's like, hey, where are you going? You need a ride somewhere? And he said, get on. We'll drop you off wherever you need to go. I mean, stories like that. He was a mega rock star. He didn't have to do that, but so many stories I hear like that. That's the kind of guy Ronnie was.
Yeah, that's a man with character and class. Absolutely.
Yeah, and let me ask, how long, George, have you been doing your Dio tribute show?
I actually, let's see, this is 2020 now, so we're talking about almost 10 years now.
Wow.
It originally started out with, we started a band called Dio Nation.
Okay.
And we had a guitarist that decided that he wanted to go on and do some other things.
Okay.
So then from there we had found another great guitar player for Dio Nation, and that we just clicked very well. But as musicians, a lot of these working musicians, they don't just play in one band; they play numerous. Of
course, yeah. You got to make a living, right? Yeah.
Exactly. If this is the path you choose to do, yes, this is you will play in many or play with many. And so they at that time, Jimmy's our guitar player decided that he was going to do something else, and so. I really, and at that time, I had fun with it. It was always something off a bucket list.
Yeah.
I always knew that I could sing that man, and I knew I could fill his shoes. And or else there's no way I was going to do this. But it's just kind of so funny because when you think, all right, I'm done with this, something happens. You get a phone call and says, hey, by chance, can you? We have a gig this weekend. Our singer. Is unavailable, and we're doing about a majority of it is going to be Sabbath of Ozzy, but we also know you sing some Dio. Would you mind doing that? Sure. Wow. So I went down to that gig, and I live in the city of Wildomar, which is very close to Lake Elsinore.
Okay.
So And so what happened was that they asked me about the gig. I said, great, and I never heard anything else.
Wow, wow.
So 3-4 weeks go by. I got a phone call that day, and it was a message like, hey, we're looking forward to seeing you tonight. There's going to be a packed house here, and it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I really had the choice of either doing this gig or not doing this gig, but I'm a rocker at heart, and it's like, no, let's go. So I ended up, after doing a day gig, I ended up driving out to Ontario, and that's where I met my current crew for Dio Resurrection, and ever since then, everything just fit like a glove. So I'm very proud of my players. Everybody plays with their heart and soul, 100%.
That's great. Now let me ask you, did the Dio Nation band, did it fold because just because the other guys were no longer in the band, and did somebody else own the name, or did you just like, well, it's time to kind of move on since they're, no
well,
longer?
I felt like at the time the Dio Nation had been formed. It was almost for about 3-4 years, and I just felt like to carry on with the same name as Dio Nation, I just feel like it just wouldn't be right.
The reason I ask is one thing. I'm a big supporter of tribute bands, and that's one reason I contacted you about doing the interview, because I was interested in talking about Ronnie James Dio, obviously, and Black Sabbath and all that. But I've noticed a lot of tribute bands, like when one or two guys leaves, most of them change a name. Is that why do you think that's the case? Because most times, like, you're doing an original band and the guitar player leaves, you just replace them. Is it because usually some other guy owns the name, or?
It all depends, and it all depends how the dynamics of the musicians are in the band. You could have somebody that's, no, this was my band, this is my idea, so this is, if it's not going to be with me, it's that kind of deal.
Okay.
So, somebody asked me, how long have you been doing this? And I've been playing full-time music since 2005.
Wow.
So, and I have over 4 bands besides my tribute band.
Okay.
Playing in a band, booking a band, and keeping a band together are all different things.
Oh, yeah,
Once you learn that, you will be successful at it.
Yeah.
But with my new guys, Rich Martin and Johnny Fortune and Mike Edwards, there was just such this, from the very first time that we had played, all of us played together, it clicked. It absolutely clicked. And then I found out that my drummer, Mike, he was an absolute Vinny Appice.
Oh, wow.
Or a beast, depending who you ask.
Yeah.
That was his guy. So he knew all his fills and everything else. And, everything, when you listen to Dio's music, and even everything's iconic, the drumming, the guitar sound, everything. So it's all very important. So when you find players that love that music and encompass it, you're going to have a better time playing it, and it's going to flow more naturally.
Wow. And that's very interesting. Now, when you started Dio Nation, I was curious, had Ronnie passed already, or was he still around when you guys?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously there's more of a demand now that the man's passed on. But did you kind of find that in your case that there's really a demand for this Dio stuff?
Well, after a couple of years of Ronnie passing, there seemed to be a couple that were kind of they were popping up here and there.
Yeah.
But I just felt myself, a lot of them just weren't encompassing the spirit of himself and the sound. Don't get me wrong, there's lots of fans out there, and there's lots of great players and singers. But to be able to, what's the word? He has a growl.
Oh, yeah.
But he's also very much a melodic singer.
Yeah.
He's a storyteller.
Oh, yeah.
And especially when he would do his little in-betweens, like, say, when his Rainbow years, Shame on the Night and some of these ones that he would be doing, he would be telling you stories. And it takes you back to those Renaissance times.
Yeah.
And so you need it. And so as a singer, and if you're going to see Ronnie James Dio, you need to encompass all that and not just his growl or his roar.
Yeah. In fact, one of my favorite songs was one. I think it was off of Angry Machine, and the guitar player was this guy Tracy G. It was a ballad-like song. It was called "So This Is Your Life." and it was a very different kind of track. But you listen to that, and man, the guy could not only could he belt it out, but he could sing like an angel.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I got to really commend you for what you do, George, because I'll tell you, like I said, I'm a big supporter of tribute bands for a lot of reasons. I mean, first of all, for you to get up there and kind of do your, I don't know if you want to say impersonation or do your tribute to Ronnie, takes a huge amount of talent. But there are other tribute acts, for example, where I like to call it rock and roll theater in the sense that, they take it the extra level and they try to not just go up there and play the songs, in their jeans and t-shirt, but they try to dress the part.
Right.
And I dig that for a lot of reasons. Number one, I'll give you an example. I seen this Guns N' Roses tribute years ago in Hollywood called Hollywood Roses, and the singer from that band, he used to play with Steven Adler in his solo band, but they all, like the guitar player, he looked like Slash. This singer, he looked like Axl Rose. And first time they come on the stage, they're doing "Welcome to the Jungle." Man, it took me back to 1987 all over again when I heard that song for the very first time. It reminded me of the very first time I heard, "Sweet Child of Mine" on the radio. They were just that good. And I was thinking at the time, man, Guns N' Roses, when they do come to town, it's not the original lineup. They charge so much money to go see the real band now, and they don't tour like they once did. So this might be my closest I ever get, to seeing an actual Guns N' Roses show.
Correct.
And then like I said, I got to tell people, I just contacted you, about a week or so about doing the interview we're doing today, and I've never seen the band live, but I've seen clips of you guys, and you actually, interestingly enough, sent me a clip to check out of your band. Doing Neon Nights, and I dug that because that's kind of a song that you and me kind of both got turned on to Black Sabbath as far as the Ronnie James Dio stuff, as we were talking earlier in this interview. And you don't necessarily look like Ronnie James Dio, but I got to tell you, you were mentioning the robes, and the robes you wear in that I seen online. I mean, that's very much like something Ronnie James Dio would do, but you don't necessarily look like identical carbon copy of him, but it's not so important in this band because, like you said, you've got the tunes down. I will say that, and it doesn't necessarily matter that you don't look the part because you're still delivering the goods, I think, to the Dio fans.
Yes. And thank you for saying that. That was kind of always something that was kind of that would worry me about it. Are they going to accept this?
Yeah.
But at the moment that, as he said to go, George, he goes, and I've heard this before many times. And like I said, I have 4 bands, and one of them is my Little George band, which is a cover band that I travel with. They said, we look at you and we kind of go, okay, but as soon as you start singing, open your mouth, you're like, where did this voice come from?
Yeah.
And I've been very blessed with that, and I'm very grateful. And when it came to Dio, once I would start singing Dio, and they would hear how the reverence and the care and just all the little minute even the hand gestures and stuff. Because like I said, that first show at the Coliseum changed my life.
Yeah, you got the voice. I wanted to
be a musician performer because of that first show.
Yeah, you got the voice, and it's interesting because while we all think of what a great frontman Ronnie was and a great singer and songwriter, I think a lot of people fail to realize, which I didn't even know until I heard Ronnie talking about this a few times in an interview. Most people fail to realize he was not just a singer. From what I understand, he could play the piano. And I guess his actual instrument of choice was the bass guitar, but he wanted to really focus on singing and being a frontman. But I heard where he'd say, like, even when Dio would go into the Dio band would go in the studio, like, and he'd be recording demos. A lot of times the bass player wouldn't show up on time, or he'd be recording demos and he'd be playing the bass, just trying to get an idea down. And it's kind of interesting. Never seen him do that on stage, but again, and then Ronnie was one of those guys too. He was just such a powerhouse, vocalist, and he was so true to who he was. I mean, it's interesting because, like, if you go back and you listen to the stuff he did with Rainbow, again, classic stuff like you mentioned, "Man on the Silver Mountain." That's one of my all-time favorite Ronnie songs. I think more of it, I guess, is a Ronnie tune, but it's actually a Rainbow tune, and it's interesting because Ritchie Blackmore is one of my all-time favorite guitar heroes. From Deep Purple, obviously, and then later Rainbow, but Rainbow never really reached the level, let's say, as Deep Purple, because you go. Ritchie was constantly changing the singers, but a lot of people, they go to the stuff he did with Ronnie. But that was one thing. Ronnie James Dio was not a big fan of Ritchie Blackmore, and he was always. I remember hearing him saying in an interview, Ritchie Blackmore, great, very talented guitar player, but no, I'd never want to work with the guy again. He's just one of the most worst human beings. He did awful things to different people, but the point being, Ronnie was who he was. He spoke the truth. He didn't try to sugarcoat how he really felt.
Exactly. That's the one thing. You would always get truth from Ronnie. And Ritchie and him had a really unique relationship. That's for sure. They created some of the most memorable music, especially with songs like Stargazer and Kill the King.
Oh yeah.
The power would just pump right through.
And Kill the
and actually, like I said, one of the other tribute bands I sing for is a Deep Purple Rainbow tribute band called Perfect Strangers Rising.
Oh,
and
wow.
I get to sing on that band. I get to sing those songs.
Wow.
That were always on my bucket list. I never thought I could be able to play with a band that would be able to, first of all, have a keyboardist that is that talented and a guitar player and a drummer and just the whole bit. So I've been very, very fortunate to be able to do that.
It sounds like it, yeah.
So it's like I said, I'm very proud that I'm part of that group and that tribute band, and that's next level. So
and Kill the King, you almost kind of think of that was a message, of the friction that was going on at the time, because it's often been said. It's funny that when you're in a band with with two or three guys and they really hate each other, even like Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, they have one of those relationships where he said, we're like brothers, we love each other, we hate each other, but some of that stuff made for
Keith Richards. There you go.
Yeah, made for classic, great songs.
Right. Absolutely.
And just
like I said, I just feel very, very fortunate that I was able to see that man perform. With Sabbath years, and I saw them. I saw him on that tour. I saw him on the Mob Rules tour, and then of course I've seen pretty much every tour all the way up to Lock Up the Wolves.
Oh wow! Now, did you see did you see when he went back to Sabbath the first time and they did that Dehumanizer tour? I remember.
No, unfortunately, at the time I was working internationally, so I was flying a lot, and I was unable to. I did know that at the time, though, that the music now was being dropped a half a step.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit easier for him because that's when he was just starting to feel that sickness that was coming on.
Yeah.
So it disappointed me, but again, at the same time too, I understood it. But it still did not take away anything from his performance at all.
Yeah, I was talking about like in 1992 when he went back to Sabbath for the first time. They did that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the Heaven and Hell tour. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we're all over the place, but I was just bringing that up because I remember, Ronnie came back for the first time like in 1992, and they do this great album, Dehumanizer. You may remember they had the song Time Machine and the Wayne's World soundtrack, and and it seemed like everything was firing on all cylinders. And then all of a sudden, when they get to do the gig in L.A., they drop a bomb on Ronnie that, hey, guess what? We're gonna be open, instead of doing a headlining show. We're gonna be opening for Ozzy in L.A. And you could imagine, Ronnie feeling the way he did, and I really don't blame him saying, okay, you're gonna do that. I'm not gonna show up for the gig. We're not gonna open for your former singer. I'm the singer now. And so Ronnie didn't show, and they ended up getting Rob Halford to do that gig for the night, which is kind of an interesting thing. But and so it's kind of.
Thank you for confirming that. that was a rumor that I heard, and I never knew if that was true or not. So thank you for confirming that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could find stuff about that online. But yeah, it was really stupid because they had this great new album and things were all, and then they wanted to go open for Ozzy instead of having a headlining. I mean, you can imagine Ronnie's kind of, hey, what do you guys? And that's when he went back and did that Lock Up a Wolves album, like a year or two later.
Right.
But yeah, but again, getting back to Heaven and Hell, let's just go down the track list. We mentioned Neon Nights and Children of a Sea. Another one of my all-time favorite tracks on here is Lady Evil. I mean,
correct.
I used to actually think, I mean, it is a Dio song, but it's actually Sabbath. But I used to think for some reason that was a Dio track. But Heaven and Hell, the title track. Now I love that for obvious reasons, but I even heard Ronnie talking about it. He says, well, heaven and hell, people just don't know about the afterlife. You hope there's a heaven, but you just don't know. And then they say if you're bad or whatever, you're going to go burn in hell. I mean, who knows what really awaits?
Correct. One of the most famous lines from Mark Twain was, it goes, so after you die, do you think you're going to heaven and hell? He goes, I personally don't want to have an opinion on it because I have friends in both places.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I heard somebody once say people, nobody wants to go to hell, but I wonder which would be more fun, heaven or hell. I mean, just think what must be going on in hell,
Well, just to kind of think of all the iconic musicians that we have lost along the years.
Yeah.
I will share one thing though. When I die, I expect wherever gates, be it an elevator going up or down, But I expect my guide is going to be, and I would hope it to be Ronnie, but I expect it to be Bon Scott.
Yeah, it's funny. AC/DC has nothing to do with Ronnie or Black Sabbath, but I just got to say for a minute that I don't know if you had a chance to hear the new AC/DC album, man. It is rocking. I mean, I dare say, and this is really saying something, but I dare say it's probably the best thing they've done in since Back in Black. And I gotta also say the fact that Malcolm Young is no longer in the band, although I understand he had a hand in the writing these songs, I guess, before he got sick, and it's just amazing. They're back and better, and I got to just say that only because just about 2 years ago, we all thought AC/DC was over and done with. They did that tour with Axl Rose and Brian, and Brian and Phil Rudd were out of the band, and Cliff Williams, but they've all come back for, I guess, one more album. So, and I understand.
And I'm glad. I'm glad. I actually have a son that is autistic and has Asperger's, and
wow.
He's high functioning.
Yeah.
But he's 27, and he actually about to turn 28, and he really wants to go see AC/DC.
Well,
and he was just exposed because of all the Marvel movies, and so that's what he's hearing. But so I'm more than happy to be able to go ahead and to go see AC/DC when we're around, and I've had some fun times with that.
Yeah. Hopefully all this lockdown stuff won't be forever, But
it will. We have to have faith, and I know sometimes it's very hard, but we truly have to have faith. I feel that next summer is going to be the best summer ever again.
I hope you're right.
Just like when the album was released of Heaven and Hell in 1980.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great time. We're all going to be right back out there again, feeling the love from everybody.
And George, I got to just say, well, this just popped in my head as we're speaking, but can you believe Heaven and Hell, this album we're talking about by Black Sabbath, came out in 1980. 2020 marks the 40th anniversary of this album. Can you believe that?
I can't sometimes, but it does kind of peg you.
Yeah.
It just lets you know where you're at.
Yeah.
And like I said, that album, I remember sometimes they'd ask you, well, if you were stranded on an island in the middle of the ocean, you had 5 albums. What 5 would they be? That's definitely one of them.
Yeah, and
definitely one of them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting you say that because I mean, could you imagine if you were stranded on a island, on a desert island somewhere, all alone, and you're wanting somebody to find you, man? This album, this music here is so damn loud that somebody would have to hear it and find you.
Exactly. Songs like "Wishing Well" and "Die Young" were just amazing tracks too.
Oh, Die Young, that's one of my all-time favorites.
We're flipping over the album because you would go, first song was Neon, then it would end with Heaven and Hell, and you flip the album over, and first song right off the bat is Wishing Well. It just draws you right back in.
Oh, Die Young, that's I don't know, that's one of the all-time great Ronnie songs,
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because when people talk about the Ronnie James Dio era of Black Sabbath, this seems to be the go-to album. If somebody was to ask you, hey, of all the stuff Ronnie James Dio did with Black Sabbath, if I wanted to kind of get an idea of what they sounded like, what's the album? Yeah, I think most people would recommend Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell.
Absolutely.
And
just
go ahead. I'm sorry, George. I'm cutting you off.
No. I was just saying that just this weekend alone, when we had performed, we performed with a Van Halen tribute band and it was a Van Halen tribute band and and it was a Sabbath tribute band that was doing it with Ozzy and the Ozzy years. There was some, millennials, these 20-year-olds that were there, and the first thing that they said was, he goes, are you the one who's singing Dio? Yes. Mm-hmm. Are you going to sing anything off that Heaven and Hell album? That is my favorite. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, well, obviously this is the parents' influence here.
Yeah.
But he goes, that is just my favorite album. I really hope you sing Heaven and Hell. So I'm asking if you could do it, and I'm like, I think I can help you out there.
Yeah. I mean, that is so funny, and I was just going to say, Heaven and Hell, too, the song and the album, it has influenced so many, not just musicians, but so many people in general. I mean, so much that one of my favorite bands that ever covered this song, if you can believe this, Stryper of all bands covered Heaven and Hell a few years ago when they put out a great covers album.
I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, you could go on YouTube, just type in Stryper, Heaven and Hell, and I tell you, Michael Sweet does a mean Ronnie James Dio.
Wow, I'm definitely going to, after we're done with our interview, I'm definitely going to bring that up.
Yeah, but it's just so. Now, talk about you mentioned the performance you did last week. Was that the first time you guys have been able to perform in a while, or have you been doing shows?
Yes.
So what was that like?
Oh, it was like being reborn again. Mm-hmm. Going to your first show and being wowed. It was a great time. There was social distancing there, I got to tell you. Mm-hmm. But when it came time for the band to get up there on the stage and do their thing, you when you're on stage, you get this love from the crowd, and there is nothing like it in the world. Nothing like it in the world. There's a line from Supertramp where it says, when you're up on the stage, he goes, it's so unbelievable, so unforgettable how they adore you. Yeah. That's exactly how it is. And I want to stay in that moment. I never want it to end.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I miss going to concerts and stuff, and I understand the world is the way it is, but I live in Long Beach, California. There's this club called the Gas Lamp right down the street from where I live. And what I dig what they've been doing lately is, for example, they have all the movie theaters, for example, closed. So they've been having, movie night like usually on a Friday. Sometimes they play one or two movies, but you have to go out in the parking lot. They've been holding concerts where you can't go inside the club. Only the band can go inside the club, and they perform and do their little show. And then they got a big movie screen out there, so you can kind of have that concert experience. It's not exactly the same, but I dig it because instead of telling people you can't go out and have a good time, they're finding other ways of doing it.
Yes, the drive-in concert experience is the latest thing, and I'm glad they are doing that. At the Gas Lamp, obviously the band is inside and they're doing the projectors outside. Yeah. There are some venues where it's basically just like a drive-in.
Yeah.
You're setting up, or they're setting up stages. They're setting up. I know in Ventura, they were setting up a stage that had basically 4 screens all on the top.
Wow.
And all the cars that were parked are 360 degrees encompassed around it. Yeah. And the closer you are, the higher I say the higher your ticket or your price per carload.
Yeah.
But that's what they've been doing. Now in Europe, I've been seeing where they have these almost erected little mini stages that hold maybe 6 people with a couple of chairs, and there's just rows and rows and rows, and everyone's separated here, and you've got the stage off into the background over there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
And I have a friend of mine that she says, I would put on a hazmat suit and go to a show as long as they don't cancel my music. I'll do that. I want to keep going. And people will. They will figure out a way.
I hope so, because, another sad thing I recently heard or was reading online too is Ticketmaster has this great plan that in order for people to go to concerts again, that you're going to have to prove that you've been tested for coronavirus, but you don't have the virus. And I'm like, man, they're really going all out here.
Wow. Well, I even heard that that's even a possibility for working. If you are now going back to work, you would need to show, or at the time they would have some type of quick test through saliva or whatever it may be, where you're able to do it. So this is going to be some interesting time.
And it's not to get political here or anything for a minute, but I bring it up too because people fail to realize when you talk about locking everything down and closing everything and not allowing people. I mean, we need entertainment, we need music, we need to have that release. And then again, a lot of people do not realize, bands that even do like what you're doing, George. It's part of a way you make your living, and so not only the bands and the fans suffering, but a lot of the venues. I mean, it's very sad. Like if you go down to Hollywood, the Sunset Strip, I mean, legendary places like the Whiskey and the Roxy and all that, the Troubadour are really in danger of closing down for good. And there's not going to be a music scene,
Yes, and that is the double-edged sword of all this. It really is. It's hard to say. All we can do is just really try to hold on as best we can.
Yeah.
And hopefully some of these venues are able to figure these things out.
Oh, yeah.
And how they can be able to survive with that. But live music is also very healing.
Yeah.
It is healing for people. It reminds you of those good times you had with your friends.
Oh, yeah.
It's so funny how how a song can just uplift you.
Yeah.
Or make or if it reminded you of a sad time in your life, it's going to take you right back and rekindle those emotions.
I mean, yeah. You and me doing the interview here talking, you can hear your love about Ronnie James Dio coming through the telephone here, and
thank you. Thank you. I am truly so grateful that I feel like it's looking down at me or looking up at me and going, you know what? If there's a guy who's going to get up there and do it, he's the one. I want him.
and I got to ask you about the band name. I mean, it's kind of obvious to me, Dio Resurrection, but resurrection to me means a lot of things. I mean, it could literally be the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I mean that when you hear that word, that's one word that comes, one thought that comes to mind. And then probably in your case, very much like mine, I hear resurrection. Another thing comes to mind is that first Halford album Rob Halford put out by his band Halford. Great album. But in this case, Dio Resurrection, it's almost like I don't want to say the second coming, or it's almost like when you're hitting that stage, playing these Dio songs. It's like a celebration of Ronnie James Dio's music and or resurrection of it, so to speak.
Exactly. A friend of mine at the show on Saturday says, he goes, George, I've seen you play some different bands. He goes, but what you do with this band is you really encompass his spirit and you bring it to life. He goes, you don't look like him, and that's okay. He goes, we close our eyes, and I'm right back at the Forum, hearing him sing while you're singing Straight Through the Heart and some of these other songs. Yeah. So I'm grateful that I'm able to do that, because those are some big shoes to fill. Those are some really big shoes to fill.
And you mentioned the band Viva Halen, which I know you guys did the show with them last weekend, and I actually interviewed the guitar player Frank a few days ago.
He's a great guy, by the way. He's a really nice guy.
And we were talking about, we were doing an interview in his case. He's telling me about what the first Van Halen album, meant to him, and very much like what we're doing today. And I was telling him too, like, I'm a big supporter of tribute bands, and I said, Frank, I really dig bands that, kind of dress the part, but I said, in your case, what you guys are doing, I mean, let's think about this for a minute. Not that it even matters, but just kind of to make the point. In Frank's case, Spanish guy paying tribute to Van Halen, and he's not trying to dress up. He's not trying to convince anybody he's Eddie Van Halen or the second coming of. And as great as it may go to see a band like the Atomic Punks, who they do a great job of dressing the part and playing the songs, but in Viva Halen's part, the band you guys played with the other day, they just do a great show of reproducing the songs. And again, very much like with what you're doing with Dio Resurrection, it doesn't seem to matter that they don't dress the part because they're still just that great at delivering the goods.
Exactly. As long, people know when you are already up on stage, you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
You're practically naked. So you're putting yourself out there. And so all you can do is give your 100% of what it is that you're up there to do. And people see that, and not only do they see that, they appreciate it, and with their responses and their looks and the hands are up in the air, you get that energy. Once it's a give and take. The crowd gives us the energy, and we're going to give it right back.
Yeah,
and it goes back and forth and back and forth.
And there's such authenticity of what you do, in the sense that like if I was to close my eyes, like I played the clip you sent me of Neon Nights, and like you close your eyes, you sound a lot like Ronnie. So there's really no need to really convince anyone. But I think on the flip side, if you looking the way you do, if you tried to dress up, people would be like, this guy, who's this guy think he's full? And he looks nothing like Ronnie. But you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because you have the diehards who they're. I was talking to some guy who played in an AC/DC tribute, and he told me, he goes, "Yeah, if you're gonna dress the part, you got to really look the part." He said, because like especially says AC/DC fans, they are really diehard, and they pay attention to every lick you play, and if it's even off just a little bit, they notice.
Just commenting on that a little bit. There are some tribute bands that are dressed to the teeth,
yeah,
or whatever band that they're creating, and they look great, but they sound okay.
Yeah.
And there's some that don't dress to the teeth, but they sound amazing. And so it's trying to find that kind of right balance.
Yeah.
Between that to make it happen. I have a really good friend of mine. He's a singer for Bonfire.
Oh, wow.
His name is Sean, and he's a vocalist. That man, you could be sitting 2 feet away from him and having a conversation, and I swear you're looking right at Bon Scott.
Oh yeah,
And not only does he encompass him, he looks like him. His mannerism when he sings, everything about him, he's Bon Scott.
Oh yeah, they're
they're.
I know exactly. They're like the authentic. One of the premier AC/DC tributes out here for that very reason, like you were mentioning. Now, see,
right, and one of my favorites.
Yeah, AC/DC is a much harder band to kind of cover for the simple fact that they're all like 3-chord progressions, and there's all like simple chord patterns and stuff to play. But see, that's the trick, is getting a guy that can do like the Bon Scott stuff and the Brian Johnson stuff. I mean. There was this one AC/DC tribute, I forget the name, but out of Florida a couple years back, where it was the guitar players were like a father-son team, and then they had 2 different singers. They would have early on in the set they would do the Bon Scott era, and they'd have one guy sing the Bon Scott stuff, and a different singer would come out and do the Brian Johnson stuff. Now I thought that's kind of something different. That's kind of a cool concept, because again, if you're going to do a tribute band, there's half a dozen AC/DC tributes, so yours has to kind of stand out. You got to have a little something extra if you're going to do AC/DC, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
There's even I've even seen an all-girl Dio band called Dio.
Oh yeah. They're pretty good. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, they're good. They are good, and I got to tell you that the guitar player of Dio, she's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
I mean,
and so, but we do what we love, and we love what we get to do. And we're very fortunate for that, and especially in these times right now. If you're able to perform and you're able to have a gig, and you're not rocking the world where somebody's knocking at the door and going, "Hey, what are you doing in there? This is not supposed to be happening." You're fine.
Yeah.
You just really have to kind of watch what you do, but again, at the same time too, You know, rock and roll was never meant to be outlawed
it's amazing because another great tribute band comes to mind, having nothing to do with Ronnie James Dio. Just while we're on the subject of tribute bands, is the Iron Maidens. Now, okay,
yes,
I mean all female Iron Maiden tribute. I tell you, I seen them the very first time. I'll never forget. I closed my eyes again. I thought, man, this chick, she can sing as high as Bruce Dickinson.
Yes.
Yeah. And
yes, she can.
And the amazing thing about the Iron Maidens is they have taken their show worldwide. I mean, they played Russia, Germany, Mexico, and I don't know where else, but they've been all over the place.
Right, and they deserve it too. They are definitely those ladies are phenomenal, and they bring to life what the Maiden fans are needing and wanting, and they fill that void. I think it's great. And
I wanted to ask you about you mentioned you played in some other bands, and we can talk about that maybe in a future interview. But you mentioned also playing with the Deep Purple Rainbow tribute, and I was kind of curious. As a Deep Purple fan, do you favor like Ian Gillan, let's say, versus David Coverdale, or what do you think of both those guys as singers?
I think they're both in their own right are phenomenal singers. Each of them had their own style and really had big hits with the band with their own style. You got Coverdale that's singing Hush.
Yeah.
Then of course you got Ian Gillan with Burn and of course Smoke on the Water and Highway Star and of course let's not forget when they reunited on the Perfect Strangers album. That just created nothing but a whole string of hits.
Oh yeah.
So they were able to do that. I'm really fortunate with that band because in reality I'm seeing almost 4 or 5 singers, which actually there's Dio for Rainbow. I'm singing Joe Lynn Turner. Yeah. I'm singing Ian Gillan. I'm singing Graham Bonnet, and I'm also singing Coverdale. So that's 5 singers.
Yeah. Now, and that's not hard. That's not easy to do, doing 5 different singers, But because they're all different pitches and stuff. But I'll give you a real hard one that a lot of Deep Purple fans like to throw out there. If you had to pick between, let's say, because and I agree this is hard to do. If you had to pick Machine Head or Burn, is that something you could even think of doing?
Burn.
It's funny, I'm right there. I love both albums, but I'll tell you a funny story. Like my introduction to David Coverdale, because when those Purple albums came out, I was a little younger at the time, but my introduction to David Coverdale was at 1987 Whitesnake album, and then after hearing that, and he started doing all this press for that album, I heard him talking about, back in 1973, I was in this little tiny band, Deep Purple, and then I went back and let's listen to what albums he played on with them, and I'll never forget hearing her and Burn. I thought, oh my God, that's the same singer. I mean, yeah, it's the same singer, but I'd heard these songs on the radio before, not even knowing it was a guy from Whitesnake.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely correct. In fact, I saw that tour in '87 with on the Whitesnake Slide It In tour.
Yeah.
And that was Coverdale. It actually opened up me going back to the Deep Purple years, just like you. Go, all right, I'm going to check this out. Yeah. I knew about Hush, but that was about it.
Well, I'll tell you. Actually, Hush is not Coverdale or Ian Gillan. That's, I think, off of like one of the very first Deep Purple albums. I think the singer on that was named Rod Evans.
You're right. You are absolutely right. You are right.
Now there is a version with Ian Gillan when they did that. They did a live album like right after I think Perfect Strangers or House of Blue Light, and there was a new updated studio version, and I think Ian Gillan sang on that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he did.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting, but very much like Ronnie and Black Sabbath. Coverdale with Deep Purple, when Ian Gillan left the band, I mean, everybody thought, oh man, who are they going to get to replace Gillan? But Purple was able to remain successful. They didn't really skip a beat, and then Coverdale, along with Glenn Hughes doing his backing vocals, the two of them together, man, they just they were magic.
Yes, and people thought the same thing too when Ricthie left Purple and they got Steve Morris. How was that going to work? And it worked out beautifully.
Yeah, now bringing Ricthie up because he's one of my all-time favorite guitar heroes. And everybody you talk to, the guy's kind of got a personality problem or whatever you want to say. But I mean, he's very talented. You cannot deny that. But I've read like recent things, articles where Ricthie has said, actually how much he loves. They asked him what did he think of the guitar players that have replaced him in Deep Purple, and he said, well. Joe Satriani was briefly in there, and he says, what he does, he's great at what he does, but he kind of bores me. But he actually says, I think Steve Morse is a better fit. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, everybody's going to have their favorites, huh?
Yeah. I mean, that's so true. But Ricthie too, very much like Ronnie. He's kind of true to who he is in the sense that the last time he left Purple was in 1993, I think, on the Battle Rages On tour, and him and Gillan, they've always kind of had this love-hate thing, and it just got into it on stage, and Ricthie kind of stormed off the stage in the middle of the show and said he was quitting the band, and he never went back.
Yep. He's a character.
Yeah, but again, it's made for some beautiful music, and I'll say this about Ricthie is. Like a lot of people, I love what he did with Deep Purple and Rainbow, but and for years I really I'd heard he's doing this kind of folky kind of thing with Blackmore's Night, and it sounds nothing like Deep Purple or Rainbow, but I was pleasantly surprised. His publicist sent me a Blackmore's Night CD a couple years back. I thought, okay, well I'll at least give it a listen, and I kind of was pleasantly surprised. It's not again, it sounds nothing like Deep Purple, but I thought, okay, it's not so bad. Yeah, I can at least listen to some of this,
Right.
I think people just have to have a open mind. Well, as you can tell, George, I really enjoyed talking to you. You and me have a mutual love for all things Dio. So, again, this is going to be part one of the interview. Next time we're going to talk about the very first Dio album. So I'll hit you up about doing that maybe sometime next week or the following week, and we'll get it done. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
Oh, I just want to say thank you so very much for the opportunity, and I'm very grateful, and I just want to say for everyone, everyone stay safe out there. We will get through this, and the sooner the better, because I know we have a lot of people out there that want live music back again, and in full force and in full swing, and it will be. We just got to have some faith, people, and everything will work out. And thank you for what you do. Oh
yeah, thanks, and George, I hope we can really keep in touch because. We're a big supporter of like local talent like you, and you mentioned you're in quite a number of bands. So maybe when we do the second part of this interview, we can talk about some of the other bands a little more in detail because I'd like for people to really follow you and support what you do.
Well, thank you so very much. I look forward to that.
Okay, take care, my friend. Bye bye. Thank you.
You take care.